Hello and thank you for watching this video today from us here at Sustainable Aylesbury, where today we're going to be talking to Aylesbury Homeless Action Group, Karen from Aylesbury Homeless Action Group, on preventing homelessness in Aylesbury. So hello Karen, good to have you with us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's great you could make it. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy day to spend
Pleasure.
it with me. So I guess without sort of further ado, let's dig in. So introduce yourself if you'd be so kind. Who are you and what do
Yeah,
you do?
so my name's Karen Warner and I'm the Operations Director for Aylesbury Homeless Action Group.
Amazing. So Aylesbury Homeless Action Group, what do you guys do?
That's a very good question. So we will support anybody that is either homeless or facing homelessness or vulnerably housed. And we will work with that person to try and secure long-term, safe, affordable housing. That's it in a nutshell.
Makes sense. And presumably, obviously, in the Aylesbury area beyond as well, or specifically Aylesbury?
Yeah, so we will support anybody. Most people are from either Aylesbury or Aylesbury Vale. Interestingly, I think it's about 90% of the people we see have a connection to the local area. So anybody that's in
Interesting.
need, we'll help.
Yeah, it makes sense. So I guess yourself, how did you get involved with it?
Okay, so before working with AHAG, I was a volunteer at a place called Aylesbury Vineyard Church, and they had a storehouse. And that was my first experience of meeting anybody that was homeless. And I'm a really nosy person, Bruce, and I just wanted to hear people's stories and fascinated about how people have become homeless. There was a lot of stories of people that had experienced grief, poor mental health, and that really gave me a bit of an understanding that this could happen to anyone. And these people were people, they had names, they had stories, and they weren't the homeless, they were people. And that was my first experience of homelessness and working with them, and I was hooked. AHAG happened quite soon after that. It was a really started up as a pilot study where we opened for 3 months, and I volunteered there. And that's where it started. I started off as volunteering and has been involved with it right from when it started 11 years ago.
11 years. You've answered my next question, which is when did it start?
Yeah.
That's cool. That's really awesome. It is one of those things where you just don't realize how close that anyone is to it, you know?
Yeah.
And it only takes a few things for anyone to become in that situation.
I think that's exactly it. And that's what you learn, because I think the word homeless can be very stereotypical, can be very, they're the homeless and we're not that. And actually, and we think of people as sort of tramps, and we have these horrible stereotypes, and that is not the reality. The people that we see are the same as you and me, and they have experienced, often from no fault of themselves, things that have gone wrong, so they could lose their job, mental health, relationship breakdown. All these things can happen, and before they know it, they've lost their housing, and the impact is devastating. So
And
yeah,
like
it can happen. Really interesting.
like you say there, it sounds like it's not just you know, in isolation. There's other things going on in people's lives that like leads to it. So it's,
Yeah,
I imagine there's other forms of support that people going through, you know, facing potentially becoming homeless would need as well.
yeah,
How do you guys kind of handle that kind of stuff? Because that must be super difficult as well, on top of the actual practical side of it.
yeah. I I think I think it's about really working with that person holistically. It's really trying to understand all the things that have gone wrong that's led to that person to that point. When I often do talks, I talk about Jenga, where you pull one brick out and you're still quite stable, then the next brick comes out, and then something else happens, and something else, and then it all kind of comes toppling down. And I think part of helping someone rebuild that is looking at all those different areas that have caused it to go wrong. And we can't do that in isolation. So we need to call in the professionals and the other people. So a lot of our work is very much about working with other people, other partner agencies, if it's domestic abuse, if it's mental health services, if it's addiction, if all those things. And then if we don't support that person in the right way, they will become homeless again. So, and it's working with that person and going at their speed and giving them the help and support that they want, so they are in control.
It makes total sense. One thing that I didn't prepare you for that's just come to mind question wise is
That's right.
how, because that stuff must have a sort of mental toll on you guys,
Yeah.
you know, helping people in these like terrible situations. How do you guys kind of cope yourselves? Because
yeah, I'm not going to lie, it's not an easy job. I think it's the best job I've done and probably the hardest job I've done. And so when I was a caseworker, the impact can be huge on ourselves. I think sometimes the danger is we want to kind of go in and fix everything.
Yeah.
I almost like yourself to be like a superhero with a cape that was just kind of sweep in, make everything okay. And we can't do that. And all that happens is you get burnt out. So it's really important to listen and look after yourself, and sometimes to the advice that you give to others, to do your own advice, which is tricky. I think as staff we are very hard on ourselves and very good at giving out to others and not so good at looking after each other. Well, not each other, but ourselves. So we do a lot of work on that. I've employed a mental health worker for 1 day a week, and as well as supporting our clients, each week we have a session together where he leads it and checks in on us. We do that every Wednesday morning, and just gives us a chance to talk about how we're feeling, how maybe some of the cases are very difficult to support, and that really gives us a bit of context. So we really encourage each other to be really honest about what we're finding difficult. So I try and model that myself, which is making myself vulnerable, because I want to model that to the team. But it is about being honest when we are struggling and looking after ourselves. But there is a cost involved in supporting people going through stuff, and you can't say otherwise. At times it's hard.
I wasn't expecting a different answer from that. It's especially the point you made about wanting to, you know, solve all the problems and swoop in and especially when there's sort of mental health involved, when it isn't just the practical side of things. It's almost impossible to actually do that. It completely makes sense. So as an organisation, what's the makeup of the team? How many of you guys are there? What do you each kind of do on a day-to-day basis to get an understanding?
So I'll start with me. So
sure.
I'm manager, because I know what I do, which is many things. But yeah, my job is obviously around raising awareness, funding, keeping the charity going, looking at the sort of strategy, business plan, but also as much about supporting the staff. That's really high on my list, and staff well-being, and so sort of many hats. We also have Claire, who is part-time, and she's our finance and admin manager, and she does everything. And if you haven't got a good admin person, you're stuffed. So she's fantastic. Yeah, she's amazing. I've got 3 caseworkers, 2 full-time, 1 part-time, and they're the real, they're the real front-facing. They do the day-to-day hard, tough job, and they're fantastic. I also have somebody that does some marketing for us 1 day a week. She does a fantastic job of that. So that's for the marketing side and fundraising. And then we also have our mental health worker, who we employ for 1 day a week. So there's 6 of us in the team. And then we have 10 volunteers on top of that. We also have a volunteer that helps do sort of payment side, budgeting, HIP applications, that kind of thing, and then supported by a board of trustees. So there's a lot of people involved to get this thing running. Yeah, lots of people.
Sounds like it. And how many sort of clients do you typically serve on a monthly basis?
Yeah, I think so. Since lockdown, I've got it written down, we've had 200 people.
Okay,
so
gosh.
200 clients. 121 of them were new to us, so they contacted us for the first time. 55 of those were rough sleepers. It gives you so a quarter of the people that we see have slept rough since the pandemic, and we've managed to prevent 52 of them from becoming homeless and 52 prevention cases. So we have
That's really cool.
it's a real range of people, and it keeps coming. So I think this week we've probably had another 3, 4 new people, 3, 4, and it continues. So yeah,
You
the caseload's
mentioned
high.
sort of since lockdown. I mean, I would guess, being entirely uninformed, that lockdown has had a very negative effect on the number of cases, clients that you guys would be working with. Is that true? How have things changed since COVID and all of this stuff has
Yeah,
happened?
I think so. Because since COVID, there's been emergency accommodation for everybody that's rough sleeping, and that's been fantastic. We've never had that before, so that's been an incredible opportunity. And a lot of our work is around trying to find long-term
Yeah.
accommodation. But I think what's happened is that people that were sofa surfing prior to COVID no longer could sofa surf because people didn't want people on their sofas. So places that had been okay and sofa surfing options that had worked for a long time now were no longer working. So I think that's why we'd seen an increase in people coming forward that were about to become rough sleeping. So that was a change. There's been a ban on evictions for nearly the whole of the pandemic. It was a little bit of a break. So the only time that people are now being evicted is if it's gone to court and there's massive delays in court. So I think we've not seen as many people coming forward that are at risk of homelessness, and we would really like those people to come forward so we could try and support them now rather than waiting until courts come. So I think we've had less of those type of prevention cases, but more the people that, like I said, have been sofa surfing or rough sleeping. We're beginning to see the impact of furlough and people losing their jobs. We are seeing tenancies and things that have always worked now not working. So we're beginning to see the impact of that. I think we're beginning to see more of impact of mental health, which of course is completely understandable, but also domestic abuse. So where things may have been tricky and then furlough, mental health, and where things had been okay but suddenly not been okay. So we've seen an increase in that. So we've got a very real mixed picture, and I think things don't reflect how they have been in the past, and I will be interested to see how things are going to be moving forward as well.
I was going to ask you. You mentioned there that there are people out there that you suspect are at risk that haven't kind of come forward, and it's about finding those people. So I've kind of got 2 questions relating to that. So, what would you, if someone out there knows somebody that's at risk of falling into this category of becoming homelessness, what would you suggest that they do?
Ideally, we'd like the person that's actually at risk to contact us, because that's the ideal. So I'm saying look out for your friends, talk to them, have those conversations. I think people think of homelessness as that person that's rough sleeping, begging on the street. And sometimes we fail to think about our friends as that person that's at risk. But we all know, or we might know, people that have been furloughed for a long time or are struggling, or there's not paying, struggling to pay their mortgage, they're behind on their rent. Try and encourage those people to come and ask for help now. There's so much that can be done to prevent people from becoming homeless. There is grants out there. There are people that will help and support. So you can contact on behalf of a friend, but the ideal really is to try and encourage your friend to see if they could contact us. Even if it's just an email is fine. We don't need a whole big thing. They could just whack an email and say, could someone give me a ring, or could someone send me an email? So whatever works for them. But the more that we can do now, the better it will be for people. Let's try and prevent as many people from becoming homeless as a result of this pandemic. So look out for your friends and family. Think, could that be them?
Agreed completely. It makes a lot of sense. Obviously, I guess it's difficult when you're in that position to necessarily come forward and ask that help, but I guess the alternatives don't worth thinking about.
So hard to ask for help. I think that's we would say that for mental health, we'd say that for everything. The bravest thing is just to say, I'm struggling with this, but there is help out there. It's all confidential. And there's things that could be done to stop it getting worse.
So I've got two questions in my mind. So as far as sort of the future is concerned, what do you predict will happen in the next sort of year? So with the backdrop of us kind of unlocking,
Yeah.
but the impact of furlough still being kind of there, and the job situation being what it is. What would your projections for the next year be?
It's scary. My worries is it's scary, and it's going to be scary for a long time, I think. Obviously, people's mental health, how fragile they are, savings may have gone, all those things. And I think it's really going to need each of us to really support each other during this time. I think there will be an increase in evictions. I think there will be increase in homelessness if we don't act soon. We've just got one of our support workers has now become advocacy worker to really try and help just people looking at their rights and accessing rights. We've also working with Wickham Homeless Connection and a legal drop in there. We've got access to a legal solicitor to try and give people. So we're really trying to help people access solicitors for free to get housing advice and support and try and prevent them from becoming homeless. So we're really trying to look and start that now, because we're looking ahead for the future. But I think we're going to be busy.
Yeah, I share your concern. I guess you kind of touched on it there a little bit, but sort of when someone's at risk and of becoming homeless and they come forward to you, what sorts of advice or what can you offer to them? So you mentioned legal advice, for example, there, which is really, really cool. What sorts of things?
So what we do is, like, if someone contacted us, someone ring them back quite quickly, and we'd arrange for them to be assessed by one of our support workers, and that takes about 25 minutes. And really what we're doing, Bruce, is just looking at that person as a whole to try and understand better what's happened. So we would do that first, and that might be a prevention case, it might be rough sleeping, they might be in a tenancy that's not secure, and we're seeing quite a lot of that at the moment. They might have a dodgy landlord, and then we try and get them put into the right person. So that might be that they need legal advice, and then we'd get them to the advocacy worker, legal clinic. It might just be they're really struggling with their mental health and need some support, or they're about to become homeless, and then our support worker would work with that person. So each person we try and work, it's about giving people options, because when you feel like you're going to be homeless, you feel like you've got no options. And it's about giving people choices, empowering them to make their own decisions, given the right information, because it's so much going on in their heads and so much going on. We can just make things really simple and clear for them, makes such a difference. And so whether that's temporary accommodation, it's about looking at long term. We will do whatever that person wants. So it's not prescriptive, and it's really going to what the right thing for that person.
Makes total sense. Yeah, it's going to vary a lot, I imagine, because what's going to make sense for one won't make sense for kind of another.
It's not prescriptive. I think it's like that holistic. You tell us what you want, and we'll see if we can give that for you. Rather than I think the fear is that some people think that we're just going to tell them how to live their lives or tell them what to do.
Yes, yeah.
That should never happen. This is there. We haven't got the right to do that. We would never do that. This is just helping them in this time.
Makes sense. So you mentioned two things, so short-term and long-term housing options. So what is, someone's become homeless, let's say, and they need something emergency style. What does that look like in practice? Is that hotels? What's
So if it was pre-COVID, to be honest, there was very little. There was a little bit of temporary accommodation for those people that were quite low support needs, using local bed and breakfast. But I think they had 3 or 4 during the rest, more in the winter, but not that many. Since COVID, there has been temporary accommodation, and it's all over the place. So there is a hotel that's being used, there's some bed and breakfast being used, there is the council owned a property and they've been using that, and some people are over in Wickham. So it's a very kind of bitty picture. So it is mainly bed and breakfast kind of accommodations, not always, but a mixture depending on that person and their support needs. The great thing is there's a massive team around them. So we put housing support in. There's another organisation that does that. There are drug and alcohol outreach workers. There's 2 mental health workers. So we're a really big team that really tries to really intensively support that person into longer term accommodation. And for that's more challenging unless depending on that person's support needs. So if they've got a lot of support needs, it's really hard to find appropriate accommodation in Aylesbury. We've got a new scheme that's just being launched end of March for high support needs that's just hoping to be opened soon. So that's really exciting. But yeah, it's working with that individual. So that's what short-term accommodation looks like. And if you can imagine being stuck in a bed and breakfast for a year.
Yeah, not much fun,
not much fun and really difficult for people. So a lot of support needed just to keep people.
Yeah, I would imagine if it's like a hotel, you're not going to be able to afford to eat because there's no cooking facilities in the hotel, are there?
So churches have been bringing meals in since last March every day.
Okay.
Which is fantastic, but it's not a long term.
No.
It doesn't give you any control of what you're having to eat. It doesn't give you a routine in terms of you're getting up and cooking your food. It's not. That sounds lovely for a week or two, but that's not a long term option. This is tough. This is tough on people. Boredom is a really big problem. One of the things we have started since lockdown is a befriending service with our volunteers. And so for some of the people that are really struggling, our volunteers are ringing them every week just to kind of check in on them, have a chat, and just because that's a really, isolation, boredom is a huge thing from this.
I think quite a few people out there will be able to understand that piece. Having been everyone being stuck in lockdown and being bored, but it sounds to me like it's the thing that everyone's going through, but on steroids, massively on steroids.
Yeah, I think a small room that's not yours, that you can't do any DIY, no projects.
No.
Maybe no work, limited income, not knowing what the future holds.
Yep.
That's a big ask for people. And so you can see how much support some of our clients are needing like daily support really, because it's tough for people, really tough.
I can believe it. Yeah. There's two things you mentioned there I want to sort of pick up on. Long-term kind of housing, what does that look like? Does that look like getting people into rented accommodation or and the second point, which I'll say now just in case I forget, is based on levels of need. I'll come back to that one in a minute though.
But it's a really good point. So if somebody was very chaotic with a lot of support needs, to put them into a private rental would never work. And so it's about giving people options that we know would be best for them. And so that would be different for each person. And the role of a good support worker is to explore those options. So the options available are private rental, but they need to be affordable. And for some people, it's really tight and that's really challenging. And working with good landlords that is going to provide safe, secure properties, so affordable. So we won't use dodgy landlords. Everything has to be above board in place. The idea is this is a long-term safe solution. And a lot of our work is around budgeting, affordability. Don't stick somewhere where they can't afford and make them homeless again. That's
not going to work.
So it's really about being really doing the right thing for that person. So there's a lot of conversations around helping people with that. Some people, if you've budgeted for a family and suddenly you're on your own, sometimes that's really difficult to kind of go from that to this. This is a new skill. So if you've been used to working, you've had a good income coming in and you're on universal credit, really tight. And so people need some help with that sometimes. It's not having it's not easy, and sometimes money is really tight for people. So, and one of the things we are able to help with is rent in advance and deposits, and we do that often. But really just trying to get people set up and making sure everything's done properly. So private rental is an option and is one that's used often. For people that have been in the area for 2 years, they can go into the housing register. So it's social housing, back home choice. And we help people to register for that and to bid for that. But they have to be in the area for more than 2 years. And some people have had social housing before, it hasn't worked and they can't go back on it again. So social housing is a good option, but there's a lot of people on the waiting list. It's not a quick option, and people can wait a long time. So sometimes that's an even longer term option. So you might put people into private rental to start with as a short-term option into a HMO, house of multiple occupancy, whilst bidding them for longer term social housing. So you kind of say, this is not your forever home, but let's set you up with this now, and we'll keep you bidding and things. The thing we look at is supported housing. So that would be it's a really good option for people if you've never had a tenancy before, or you've had a real wobble and lots of things have gone wrong. To have a support worker that's alongside you is a really amazing option. One of the challenges in Aylesbury is most of our supported housing is great for sort of low to medium support needs, but doesn't match the high support needs. And that's where we really struggle. And that's why this new project that's just going to start, thankfully, will help meet some of those really high support needs that need more intensive support. So there is supported housing within Aylesbury.
That's good.
That's a good option as well for some people. So those are the main things. There's a few other bit like direct lets and things that sometimes come up, but it's looking at what's right for that person with that person and how comfortable they feel with that. Some people want to just get back into work, and private rental is usually a better option for that. So it's kind of swings and roundabouts, but it's really much about what that person works for that person.
It makes a lot of sense. On the point of need, levels of need, in a past life, I was a trustee for the High Wycombe YMCA, which is supported housing for young people. And we were constantly up against the whole, levels of need, and we can only take on low to medium, and anyone that had, medium to high. And increasingly over time, as sort of funding dried up, bear in mind it was probably, 2015, 2016 when I stopped being involved in that for small children shaped reasons. It was an increasing problem, but it sounds like you guys are really well connected with other organisations that are working in Aylesbury to help those people get where they need to go, which is really, really awesome.
You have to be. You should never do this job in isolation. That would be to the detriment of the client. And I think partnership working together is vital. Because you couldn't do this job otherwise. So it's not about us. It's about making sure that each person gets what they deserve.
So,
but there's some complex. I think the support needs have got higher. I think we're seeing more and more people that probably would have been supported better in the past. And I think because of gaps in funding trickles through, and we tend to pick up people that have just been, to be frank, let down by the system. It's really sad. It
is really sad. Not good at all. So I don't, from what our conversation sort of so far, I'm guessing there isn't sort of a standard pattern for the people that come to you with need, and it's all really wide and varied. But just to give people out there a sort of flavour, what sorts of stories have people got to tell as to sort of their reasons, the background, the thing that led them to the point of becoming homelessness or nearly becoming homeless.
So kind of interesting. If you ask me what our average client was, if I look through stats and stories, 37-year-old white male relationship breakdown is our bog standard Mr. Average. Of course, we have everything between. But family and relationship breakdown is the main cause that people cite for their kind of primary reason for homelessness.
Right.
But we know homelessness is much more complicated than that. So whilst it might be relationship breakdown, when you look into it, there may have been loss of job, bereavement, unemployment. So that's unemployment, mental health. There's usually like one, we talked about this at the beginning, but so many other things that go on. I think lots of people think homelessness, they think addiction, drug and alcohol, as you're talking about. And that's not the truth at all. That's much further down. So very much for us in Aylesbury, it's family and relationship breakdown is the cause. Whether that will change coming out of the pandemic, whether unemployment might be higher, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what things look like next year. I think one of the shocking thing that we've seen is like it can happen to anyone. So our oldest people we had were 84 years old and
Really?
homeless,
Blimey.
and the youngest being 18. So it's such a broad spectrum of people.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
and we see a lot of people that are working and are homeless in Aylesbury. And I
mm,
think that's quite interesting. But I
mm.
think what happens is wages are relatively low for the area
Yeah.
compared to private rental prices. So people aren't bringing enough in
They're effectively
to
being
afford a
priced
private.
out of being able to afford somewhere to live,
Yeah,
essentially. Yeah.
and that's one of the real area issues for this area because
Yeah.
private rental is expensive
Mm, mm.
compared to wages.
Yeah, and that's a real problem. I imagine, not just Aylesbury, but the southeast in general, London and whatnot.
Yeah,
It's
Oxford.
a big problem.
Yeah, all
Oxford,
that
yeah,
is. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so one of the questions I had for you, which really interested to hear your answer for, is what is one of your all-time highlights from working at AHAG? Because you must have some really interesting stories, some great success stories over the years. And yeah, what's your highlight?
So when I was thinking about this, I think the highlight for me actually wasn't a client-related thing,
Mm,
but it was a time last year when we met together with trustees and staff to look at our values.
mm,
And our values is something really important to me because I've always tried to reflect how I've really felt about the charity and instill that in other people.
mm,
But of course, you never know whether people buy into this and all that kind of stuff. So to really try to get some feedback from volunteers and from our clients about what was important. And then we fed them in together. We had a lady lead us, and oh, it was lovely because we really saw everybody working together and just listening to how passionate our trustees and our staff were
mm,
about the charity, um, and how they really, with such agreement about how we all had wanted, how we felt really passionate about the work that we did, what was really important to us, and why it was important to us. And then the values that came out of it were creative, collaborative, integrity, consistency,
mm,
and respect. But we did that together. We worked on it together. We wrestled with it together, and it was just, I think, for me, probably the highlight of just linking trustees and where they were, and where staff were, and where volunteers were, where clients were, and coming up with this work together. And we've really tried to use those moving forward in how we recruit and the stories we tell, how we are, and just it was a really lovely moment. So I think that was my highlight. Really, it was just that work that you've been involved in when you see it all come together. It was a beautiful, for me, a really beautiful moment.
that's really cool, especially like as you say, because there's like synergy there, everyone's agreeing. I've worked in a sort of professional setting in so many places where you've got like people with internal politics, basically people after their own interests and
Yeah,
not sort of aligned on what the company is meant to be doing and our
yeah.
values. And having gone through these sort of exercises before, it's really awesome to hear that's not the case where you are.
It was, yeah, it was fantastic, and it just was like, yeah, this is us. This is who
Mm,
we are. This is us. This is, if you cut us open inside, this is what you will see.
mm,
Um, and we really tried to live those values out. So it's not just an exercise, but it came through with a lot of work around just getting everybody together, trustees, everybody together. But it was, yeah, it was a really proud moment, but
mm,
it was a really special moment. So rather than it just being an exercise, it was,
mm, mm.
yeah, it was us, and it has been us, and we've continued with that. So that's been my highlight.
Awesome. Well, thank you
Right.
for sharing it. There's a lot of stuff. One of my questions I had on my list was what worries you the most. But I can see there's quite a few things going on that would certainly be a cause for worry. But I'm going to ask the
Yeah,
question anyway.
yeah.
What worries you the most right
I
now?
thought it was a really good question, about. I think it was really interesting. It made me think, oh, what does worry me the most? Because there's obviously lots of things, but
Yeah.
I think you can tell I'm passionate about this charity, but I see the difference that it makes for people.
Mm,
And I think if it wasn't for charities like us, what would happen to people that have fallen through the net?
yes.
And I think the overall kind of burden is like making sure that we keep going, that we keep funding, that we keep meeting the needs of the people, that we. And that falls on my shoulders in terms of making sure that we get enough money coming in and staffing and all that kind of thing, so that we continue really. And I think if that's the thing that wakes me up the most, is probably just that responsibility to keep the charity continuing to go, and to continue to be relevant, and to continue to support people through, really difficult stuff.
Yeah, I can completely see that as a challenge. So this would probably be a good point to say, if someone out there that's watching this has, felt particularly passionate about this and would like to help you out and would like to donate, where can they donate and what can they donate? Is it just money? You mentioned volunteers. Is time an option? Yeah.
I think at the moment, if I was really honest, money is the best thing.
Yeah.
We do have volunteers, but it's really tricky at the moment for safety and pandemic and all those things that everyone's sick of hearing about. Donation-wise at the moment, we have been so grateful. People have been amazing, but we've almost got more than we know what to do with. And so we're kind of putting a bit of halt on donations at the moment. That may change again. And we always put something out on Facebook. If we need something, we ask for it. So we are okay for the donations. I think the thing that makes the money means that we can support people and we can get people into housing, and that's the thing that we need. You can fluff it up any way you like, really, but really that's the thing that makes the biggest difference, is that we can use that money directly for the client. Get them into housing, get them back on their feet again. And that's what makes the biggest difference.
That's what you're all about. Makes total sense. So the flip side of that question is where do you find hope looking into the rest of this year and beyond?
Do you know, this was another question that I really reflected on, and the hope is in the people that we support. I can't imagine what it'd be like to be homeless. I've never experienced it, and quite frankly, the thought of having that, I don't know how people keep going. And people are amazing, Bruce. They are so resilient. The hope is when people ask, or the hope is when people manage to keep going. The hope that people continue to function with all this going on and rebuild their lives again. And it might be not life that they've reached. It's not a path that maybe they've chosen. Things may look different, but we see it time and time again where people just are incredible, and they teach me so much about myself, because I don't know, the strength of people gives me hope to see people believe again and continue. That's where I see my hope. We get lots of quotes from people. I'm just quickly looking to say thank you. And this is one of the ones I had. So if that's all right, I'll just quickly share it with you. So this was a quote from a client that had emailed us. He said, "I'm in my flat, settling in. I just want to say thank you. I'm humbled by the amount of work that must have gone in to get me here. I am back on the map." I thought that was really powerful. Now, I'm back on the map now, and a ripple effect seems to be happening. I have an address, and I am a person again.
And I'm a person again. Wow, that's really powerful. Yeah.
We get stories like that, and that gives me goosebumps. That's why I did the job. And that's where you see the hope, because those people have been through so much. They're back on the map, and they're a person again. And there's the hope.
And there's the hope, and there is real hope there. That's really good. Thank you for sharing that. Brilliant. So, as far as 2021 is concerned, obviously it's a slightly weird old year, what with everything that's going on. What's the plan for 2021 at the moment? Maybe there isn't one. We'll just wait and see what Boris announces tomorrow and go from there. But maybe there is one. So, yeah.
The plan is to have a light plan.
Yeah.
Our plan is that we want to get back to being back in the office. We want to see people face to face. That's what we're passionate about. Whilst supporting people by the phone and other ways, it is okay.
No substitute for face to face.
My hope and plan is we can get back to some kind of normality as soon as it's safe for everybody. But also there's thinkings about So what does this look like? What have we learned? And what can we take away from this? How can we support people? So I'm really thinking about trying to reach other people that we haven't reached before. What are we missing a trick? You know, people that are working, we can support them in an evening. Why do we have to have them come to us? What else can we do? So really trying to so the plan is to keep continuing, but also to try and think about things that we've learned from this and be even better at what we're doing. So I'm kind of excited for the future, and I really, I want to use this better.
There's so much that could be learned from this. So much stuff has had to have happened as a result of the pandemic, both sort of good and bad. And you're absolutely right. There are things that most people, I'm sure, will be able to take away that are positive, or at least can be learnt from this experience. Yeah. Makes total sense, and agree with the soft plan as well. Who knows what's around the corner and whatnot next.
And that's being so we're, as soon as we can, and we will. But if you'd said to me a year plus ago you'd be doing this, I'd say it wasn't possible. We didn't do anything. We didn't support at all other than face-to-face and drop-ins. And how amazing are people that we've managed and we have continued. And look, we've supported 200 people. Had that if we had just shut down. So we're people of all of us, we're more resilient than we realised.
Yes, yeah. It's always surprising when tested. Yep. Thank you. So I guess if somebody wants to find out more about you, or maybe they're facing potentially becoming homeless themselves, where do they go to find out more about you?
So there's a phone number. I'll say it as well, but I'm sure we can put it up. 01296 435 026. It is a voicemail message, but people checking the phone every half hour to an hour, and someone will call you back. You can, we've got email address, which again we'll put up at info@ahag.org.uk. Email us, someone will call you back. There is an online chat on our website. Bruce, you'll put the website up as well. So there's a website as well. Contact us about anything, and we can either help, or if you just want to know a bit more about us, really happy to have a conversation.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So at Sustainable Aylesbury, we want our town to be a thriving community and a town that thinks about its environmental impact and takes action, practical action. So with that in mind, what do you like about Aylesbury as it stands today?
I'm an Aylesbury girl, so I love Aylesbury. I've lived in Aylesbury since I was 4, so Aylesbury is my home. And I think that's partly why I got involved with the charity, because I'm passionate about the area that we live in. And I think for me, how people really look out for each other, and that's what I love. I love the fact that we get people noticing there's a new homeless person, people call in, people do care about each other, and that's what I really love about Aylesbury.
I agree. I'm from High Wycombe, which is not too far, but not obviously Aylesbury, and I feel the same way. Aylesbury has a lot more of a kind of friendly vibe where people do look out for each other a lot more. Completely agree. So what would you like to see change? What change would you like to see happen?
That's a really tricky one, isn't it? But I would love housing to be more affordable. I'd love maybe landlords to take a bit more of a chance with people. That's a big ask, but how we work together to really make housing more available and affordable for everyone. That's a big wish. But we need housing to be affordable so people can stay in Aylesbury where they know and where most of them have come from. It's a big ask.
Oh, it doesn't have to be small. Nothing wrong with a big ask. It makes total sense. I agree. What's the one thing you think we could focus on as a community for the greatest local impact?
Yeah, that one really that was a good question that I had to think about for a while. I was really reflecting that since lockdown, we've really seen people look out for each other. So we have seen neighbours check on neighbours. We've seen people just being aware of each other, shopping, caring for each other. whether that's homeless, whether it's people housed but on their own, people isolated. And that's what I really wanted to continue. I want that for us to be the impacts that we continue
Yeah.
to support
Continuing
each
on
other.
in Aylesbury as a community, and like you say, supporting each other. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate having you on. I know we've touched on some really deep issues here for some people, and appreciate this won't be easy watching. It's not been easy to actually conduct this interview because there's some things in here that just cut you to the core. They're becoming homeless. I've never faced it myself, but it's really just horrendous thing, uprooting your whole life. And you want to see it happen to anyone. So thank you for taking the time to tell us all about it, and for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
If anyone out there is interested in Aylesbury Homeless Action Group and they want to find out more, they can go to, as you mentioned, your website, which is ahag.org.uk. You're on Twitter at AHAG There, tripping up over my own words there. If you would like to help with donations, you have a Virgin giving page, which is at this address, bit.ly/2ZLD0NN. It's a lot shorter than the full one, trust me. And then on email, your info@ahag.org.uk. And you mentioned, of course, the phone number. So if anyone is suffering and needs to get in contact with you, that's your phone number, which is 01296 435 026. So all that's left for me to do is say thank you, and just to quickly say who we are at Sustainable Aylesbury. So we're at sustainableaylesbury.org.uk. Along with this video, you will find many other videos and blog articles on similar things. We at Sustainable Aylesbury are all about making Aylesbury a better town to live in and a better place for us to bring up our children and families in, and ultimately a more green and sustainable place. And we can be found at hello@sustainableaylesbury.org.uk, or on Facebook, facebook.com/Sustainable Aylesbury, and finally on Twitter @sustain_Ales. I recommend you like and subscribe, but then I wouldn't I? Because that's where you'll go to find all of the latest information and updates like new blog articles and new videos. You'll also find more information about any projects that we're running in the local area. At the moment, we're trying to build the core of our group. It's still relatively early for us here. We are looking to find as many like-minded people as possible locally that are interested in actually taking action on local issues. So what we actually do will be up to you guys. If you're interested in sustainability and all things green in Aylesbury, go to our website and sign up to join the cause. And finally, thank you to you for watching today. I hope this has been interesting for you. It's certainly been really interesting for me. So until next time you see or hear from us, thank you very much.